This presentation, titled Auditing in the Future, How and Why Auditors Will Have to Adapt, comes to us from Daniel McConville. Daniel is the Director of McConville Risk Solutions and has extensive experience in food and hospitality, providing both food safety and occupational health and safety services to a number of industries. McConville Risk Solutions are recognized as food safety specialists and work with some of Australia's largest providers. As a tertiary qualified food safety and OHS professional, Daniel has expertise in developing and implementing food safety management systems and occupational health and safety management systems to a range of industries, including education, hospitality, health and aged care, local government, facilities management, and food manufacturing. Prior to commencing McConville Risk Solutions, Daniel worked for the Willis Group, the world's third largest insurance broker, in their workplace risk team, during which he worked on several projects for major companies. And with that, take it away, Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thanks for that introduction. And yes, welcome everyone to this webinar titled Auditing in the Future, How and Why Auditors Will Have to Adapt. Just before we get into the webinar, I'd just like to start by saying that I've put this presentation together using my own experiences auditing in both the food safety and the workplace health and safety spaces. So therefore, some of the things that I've experienced or I've had to change or adapt may not work for your specific industry. But the reason why I've chosen to use my experiences in this presentation is that I just believe that that's how a lot of us learn through various different types of experiences. And certainly those experiences have been, whether I've been the auditor or the auditee, or if I'm conducting internal audits for larger clients. So I've actually taken those experiences and use them in the bulk of this, this presentation. So let's have a look at what we are going to be covering in the session today. And if you do have any questions as we, that you might ask, or you might need to know, or you require additional information, my details are on the, at the end of the presentation. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. So what I'm going to cover today is I will go through my definition of remote auditing, maybe slightly different to yours, but this is certainly what I see as remote auditing. I'll have a look at what are some of the challenges, also what some of the benefits have been, because essentially remote auditing is here to stay. Okay, I think going back to the way that it used to be pre-COVID of continually going on site, I think that is going to change, and that's some of the things that I'll go through is where we have to adapt. But I'll also have a look at some of the problems and the issues that we need to overcome, and how we can adapt moving forward. But what is a remote audit? Essentially, a remote audit is the same as an on-site audit. However, the only differences is that the auditor engages with you via technology. And so that means that they're there at a different location. So they may be on site for part of the audit, which would be a blended audit, or they may be off-site for the entire audit. So essentially it is the same as a traditional audit. However, it's just done differently. So we utilize technology as a means of conducting these audits. So to get to a definition, essentially it's an audit being conducted when the auditor is not physically on site for the audit. And sometimes clients will call these e-audits, virtual audits, remote audits. I just tend to call them remote audits. So For the sake of the presentation, I will refer to them as remote audits. I'll also refer to blended audits, and that's where the auditor is on site for part of that audit. So they'll do some of it off-site and they'll do some of it on-site. With regards to the technologies, there are a number of technologies around that can be used to undertake remote audits. Now, I've used Zoom, I've used FaceTime, haven't had a lot of experience with WebEx or Teams, but they are platforms that you can use. There's also WhatsApp, Skype, smart glass technology, video headsets. There's a whole range of things out there that you can use. Now, when it comes to undertaking a remote audit, the question that I ask myself is, can I still achieve the objective of the audit? And if I can achieve the objective of the audit by doing it remotely, well, then I'll actually go and do that audit remotely. I just want to have a look at some of the key benefits, and I won't spend a whole lot of time going through this, but some of the key benefits are, first one, I think it should be cheaper, especially if travel is involved. So if you don't need to travel to a location to undertake an audit, then essentially the cost should be cheaper. And I would recommend that you do pass that cost onto the client. Some of the other benefits, it does avoid traveling to difficult or remote locations. So some locations are difficult to access, and that could be because they're in an isolated area. They might be overseas. They might be in a regional part of the country, or as we've certainly seen here in Australia recently, where the borders have been closed, we haven't been able to travel. So this is again where remote auditing is going to work well, because it's going to eliminate that need to get to a difficult or remote location. The other area also that the benefit there is, generally you find if you're going to a remote location, and it could be a mining site or something like that, you are going to have to undertake some sort of induction, and those inductions might be quite lengthy. By doing a remote audit, you avoid the need to undertake the induction. Also, too, some of those remote areas, accommodation might also be an issue. So it does avoid or eliminate that need to look for accommodation. Similar to logistical issues, particularly those that are on site. Now, again, the issues there could be, certainly ones that I've experienced, is actually trying to get a room to undertake the audit. So if you're doing the document review, there've been times where I've had to move rooms 2 or 3 times because someone's booked a meeting or they couldn't get the room for the whole day or those sorts of things. So that does affect your workflow. It creates disruptions because you've got to pack up and move, go to another room, and particularly if that room is in another part of the site. So you've got to pack everything up, move to another part of the site, set up, and off you go. So it does eliminate those logistical on-site issues. And then just with efficiency, again, obviously you'd think if there's a cost, if it's cheaper, then if there's cost savings, there should be time savings. If there are time savings, I suggest that you use that time efficiently and effectively. The other thing where I find efficiencies, certainly from my experience, and doing a lot of blended audits, I'll do the document review off-site, and I'll do the visual inspection on-site. Now, doing the document review off-site, I do that in my own office. I'm familiar with the surroundings. I'm comfortable in the environment. I know where everything is. I know how well the internet works. I've got additional monitors, printers, all that sort of stuff. I know how everything works. So I find that my time doing the document review is more efficient, more effective. So that's certainly another benefit of that. Over the next couple of slides, I'll go through what the challenges are, and again, certainly from my experience, what these challenges have been. And because the concept of remote auditing is still relatively new for a lot of people, you may find that your clients, your auditees, are a little apprehensive about going through a remote audit. So what I would recommend there is, again, you just in regular communication with them, letting them know it's the same as an on-site audit. I'm going to do the document review, I'll do that off-site, and I may do the visual inspection on-site, or I may do that remotely. But it's important that you do communicate that to the client or the auditee. Now, one of the big issues I found, or one of the challenges I found with remote auditing, is the auditor not being prepared to do the audit. And I think this is somewhere, a thing where auditors are going to have to adapt. Okay, early on in the year, I did a remote audit. I was actually the auditee. The auditor sent me a list of documents that she wanted to review. I sent them back on the day of the audit. Within 30 minutes of her undertaking the audit, I'd already received 6 emails requesting additional information. So you are going to have to be prepared, because for some auditees, that can be very stressful. So if they believe that they've given you all the information, you're going to sit in your office and review it. They might be going off doing something else. And then all of a sudden there's emails there. Can you send me through this? I can't find this. I haven't got that. So as an auditor, I find moving forward for remote audits, we're just going to have to be better prepared. Having a list of documents that we want to see, and really thoroughly examining that list and making sure that we've got everything, so that when we send that off to the client or the auditee, we're not constantly going back asking for additional information. The next 2 points there about lack of experience using technology and loss of communication during the audit, I think initially they were big issues. I found, though, talking to clients and other auditors, that, yeah, we have got better at that over the past sort of 18 months. Now, if you are new to remote auditing, losing internet connection, it's not a case of if I ever lose it during an audit, it'll be a case of when I lose it. It is inevitable moving forward that you are going to have internet connections, communication issues. So you need to make sure that you've planned for that. And I'm going to talk about that a little later on in the presentation. The protection of clients' data, certainly firewalls, is an ongoing issue. How I've been able to overcome that recently, I've got a couple of clients. One quite likes to put things into Dropbox, gives me access to it, and I use the information that they've provided or that I've requested. It's all there in Dropbox. So that's been a great way to get around the firewall issues. The other thing that I've done actually with one particular client is where I do a blended audit. They put everything on a USB. I go and pick it up a week, 2 weeks before the audit, review the documentation, and then when I go on site to do the visual inspection, I hand back the USB. So again, overcomes those issues of clients' firewalls and protecting their data. The last point there about the visual inspections, that is going to be an issue. And I think for a few years to come, I think that's going to continue to be an issue. Again, how I've overcome that is, again, through the planning process, trying to anticipate where I need to, things I need to see and where connection might be poor. So I'll generally give it a go on the day. If it doesn't work, or if we go into, say, a freezer and it cuts out, the connection cuts out, I'll just have a list of things there that I would like to see in that freezer. So it could be labeling, packaging, use by dates, cleanliness, those sorts of things. I'll just send the auditee an email and ask if he can, or if they can provide me with photos of packaging, of labeling, 1 or 2 photos of each, so that I get a good cross-section of things that I need to see. So, as I said, I think that's going to be an issue moving forward. So it's something that you just have to to continually work on as we go forward. Okay, so the last points here on challenges. Now, these are only things that I've experienced recently, and certainly for anyone living in Melbourne, Australia, we are the most locked down city in the world due to COVID. It's been absolutely horrendous over the last 18 months, 250 days or something we've had in lockdown. You've got parents, partners working from home, kids homeschooling, and it has become an issue. So it is going to be a challenge moving forward. But, well, hopefully we're going to eliminate it. But anyway, it is still going to be a challenge in some areas moving forward. So areas or things that I've tried to do to overcome that, particularly when I'm undertaking audits and I need to do an online inspection over Zoom. I'll have my son or my wife working from home, both on the internet. I'll try and do it at a time that suits the client, but also might be able to fit into when my son's on his lunch break. So he doesn't need to be online. So therefore, I'm not having issues with bandwidth or poor internet connections. But now that's worked for me. But if you've got young kids at home that you're trying to homeschool, you're just going to have to try and come up with a way that you can make that audit work. And look, and that could be undertaking doing the document review at night, when maybe if you've got young kids when they're in bed. But you need to try, and again, this comes down to the planning. And I can't stress that enough, is that you need to actually be really well planned for remote audits, particularly if there's other people in the household working from home. All right, remote audits, they're here to stay. So from an employer's perspective, and certainly the employers that I've spoken with, they love the concept. They perceive it to be quicker, to be stress-free. You're not on site as often or as long. They see it as a move into the future, especially those who've seen a cost reduction think it's just great. So we're not moving away from this. And I think moving forward, it's going to be a combination of 3 types of audits. We'll do ones where we're wholly on site. We'll do blended audits where we might do the document review off site. We do the site inspection on site, or we might do the entire audit off site. And I think they're the 3 options now open to us. Employers certainly love the concept of blended audits or fully remote audits, because, as I said, for them, they do see it as quicker, as stress-free, because they're not seeing the auditor all day or for 2 days. And look, I think that last dot point there, if you're going to achieve the same objective doing an on-site audit as you are going to do a remote audit, then the result should be the same. And that's one thing that I've found recently, having a look at audit results compared to ones that I'd done 2 or 3 years ago, the results are the same. Yes, it's a bit harder for me. I've had to plan more and work things out, but I've still found that the results are the same. So again, that's why I think that clients actually just are really loving the concept of blended or remote audits. But you still need to make sure that you have a plan B, or you've gone into what happens if. So as I said earlier, you are going to have issues with internet connection. You are going to have times where you can't hear someone or reception is poor. You are going to have those challenges. Loss of communication. So important that you have a plan. You have a plan B. Okay, and generally, so what I've done here, and what I would normally do is I've put together a checklist of things that could go wrong and how I'm going to resolve them if they happen on the day. And when I have the entry meeting with the client, I certainly don't show the client those, but I go through, if there's a loss of communication, this is what we'll do. If you lose connection, this is what you need to do. If we need to complete the audit over the phone because we can't reconnect, this is how we'll do it. I'll be the one making the phone calls. So we have all of those things worked out before we actually do the audit. And for me, yes, it is more in the planning, but it makes the audit on the day go a lot smoother. And if you do run into issues, instead of becoming huge issues, you've thought about it, you've planned it, and they tend to only just turn into or be minor issues. Just those last 2 points there, if there are a number of disruptions, if it really just does get too difficult and you can't complete the audit, now fortunately enough, I've never had that happen, but I have actually allocated time later on in the day to catch up with the client if that does happen, or allocated time the next day to catch up with the client. Okay, so if it does happen, you actually need to think about it. You need to plan for the fact that it will happen, because again, if you're doing enough remote auditing, it will actually happen. All right, so how do we adapt? We know that it's here to stay, so we just have to deal with it. So, and it's easy just to say that, just deal with it, but we need to communicate with the client. We need to plan. As I said before, it is going to be harder for the auditor initially, because there is going to be more planning that you have to do. But if you plan and plan well, if you establish the rules of engagement right at the start of the audit between the auditor and the auditee, then generally those issues that could be major actually turn into minor issues. So I can't stress that enough, that the planning and the communication are key to this moving forward. A couple of things that I have also done, and I suppose this is a benefit of being both the auditor and the auditee, is I'm able to look at it from both sides. So I'm able to put myself in the other person's shoes. So what are their issues? What are they experiencing? What are their barriers? Why may they not be able to finish this audit? Or why may they be putting up barriers to providing documents? I've been, as I said, having been on both sides, I've found it easier to put myself in the other person's shoes. And the other thing I have done is I've tried to anticipate what could go wrong, and then actually trying to plan for that. And that's where having a backup plan or a plan B really helps. So as I said, I'll just have a list of things that might go wrong and look at how we're going to overcome those. Some other things that I've done to adapt, I've found that I've had to stay in touch with the client a lot more. So communicate with them more often. And I'll actually, on the next slide, I've actually got a timeline that I'll go through. Look, the times aren't sort of set in stone, but I will go through that and show you certainly what I've done there. One other thing that I have done is actually changed my perception. Okay, when I was wholly on site for an audit, you just went in there, had all the documents, all the manuals or access to all of that, and you just went on and did the audit. But so now what I found is I have actually had to change my perception around that and just accept that things are going to go wrong, but they're not always going to go to plan. The key thing there, I think, is that you certainly don't panic. And the other thing that you will need to do is to consider the well-being of the other parties, okay, particularly the auditee. And I think that's where the planning really helps, because if you're not planned or you haven't planned well enough and you're constantly asking for things, that can be very, very stressful for the auditee. And they may become resentful and they may take their time providing you with information. But you do need to take that into consideration, certainly the well-being of the other parties. So here was the timeline that I was just speaking about before. So generally what I will try and do is I do like to get pretty well organised. So the dates for my audits, I will try and put in 12 months in advance. And then 6 months out from that, I'll let the client know that this is the date, the preferred date that I would like to do that audit. And then when we set the date, a month out, I'll confirm the date. I'll send them the list of documents. I'll find out if there's any barriers or anything like that they may have that might prevent them from providing the information or doing a visual inspection online, those sorts of things. Or if there are good times to do the inspection, we'll have a chat about those. Then with a week out from the audit, I'll confirm with the client that I've got the documents. Again, I'll follow up and see if there's any barriers or anything, any questions that they may have. And then in that week leading up to the actual audit day, I do like to start the audit or start the review process. And I find that if I do that, when I come to audit day, my questions are a lot more targeted. A couple of days out, again, I'll contact the client. If I'm going on site to do a visual inspection, I'll confirm the starting time. I'll go over the audit plan. If there's any material or documents that I'm missing, again, we'll have those discussions. And then when I get to audit day, if I'm going on site, I'll confirm that time at the opening meeting. If I'm not, I'll still have the opening meeting. I'll go through when the visual inspection might be, make sure I've got all my notes, and finish off any review that I need to go through. And then what we'll do is confirm the exit meeting time or the closing meeting time. All right, so as I said, that timeline is not set in stone. It does change from time to time. Okay, so where to from here? As I said before, remote auditing is here to stay. Okay, so the advantages over traditional methods, I think, are unquestionable. Whilst we still have some barriers to overcome, I think that that remote auditing is here to stay. So we need to make sure that we are well planned. We have a timeline for that. You would know yourself, having undertaken wholly on-site audits, that they may be extremely well planned and executed, but they still may cause some inconvenience or disruptions to the organisation. And I think this is why remote auditing is here to stay, because the clients see that as less disruptive. Some other key things: once you've set your timeline, you need to make sure that you are going through the planning process. Stay in touch with the client, and if things don't go to plan, don't panic. Okay, so things that I've done, every audit now that I've undertaken in the last 18 months, I've sat down at the end of it, gone through what's worked, what hasn't worked, what can I change for the next audit, what might I need to do for this client. So just trying to improve that experience as I'm going forward. Okay, that brings me to the end of this presentation. There's my details there. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to send me an email. Certainly happy to answer any of those. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you have taken something out of this presentation, and certainly don't forget to purchase your CPD certificate. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniel McConville, for that look at how auditors will have to adapt to auditing in the future. And that concludes this presentation.